Hey guys, it's only the middle of the summer and I'm already preparing for the fall. And one of my favorite things about the fall is the sweaters that go on coffee cups because I love drinking warm drinks and nothing is cuter than having a little sweater to go over the cup. So today I'm going to show you how to make this sweater. It has a cute snowflake, it has little buttons on the side that hold the sweater in place. And as long as you know how to do the knit stitch and the purl stitch, this is something you can definitely do. I also recommend checking out my tutorial on changing the colors to make a picture in your knitted project if you haven't ever done that before. So I'm going to be using thicker yarns. These are the two colors I'm using, but whatever two colors you like, go for it. And I'm also using 9mm knitting needles. And one thing I will point out is that I have a big coffee cup, not a regular small one. It's a little bit on the bigger side. So if you're using a smaller coffee cup for this project, just cut down on the stitches a little bit on either side of the snowflake. And I also have used 2 buttons, and you have to know how to sew on buttons. But as long as you know how to do those few things I mentioned, we're all set to start. Alright guys, so I'm ready to begin making my knitted coffee cup sweater. And I'm going to be knitting a snowflake into the work. So I've gone ahead and sketched everything out on graph paper. If you've watched enough of my videos, you know I'm a super nerd and I love graph paper. And the reason why I use graph paper is because every little square that you see represents a knit stitch. So I can plan everything out and visualize how my project's going to look even before I do it. So this is what the snowflake is going to look like. I'm going to have a red background, a white snowflake, and the borders with the squiggly lines that you see are going to be the garter stitch. I'm going to do the garter stitch as a border so that I don't have to worry about the ends rolling up. I want this to just look smooth against the coffee cup. So I'm going to do 25 stitches across. So I've gone ahead and knitted my 25 stitches, and just going back to the pattern I decided to do, the first 2 rows are going to be the garter stitch, which is just the knit stitch in every single row. And after that point, I'm going to continue to have the garter stitch on the borders, but on the inside, I'm going to switch off between knit and purl so that the snowflake will show up. So I'm going to knit 2 rows, and then we'll start getting a different color for the snowflake. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I've done my 2 rows of the garter stitch. So the next thing I'm going to do is start my row where it's 2 knits. The first 2 of each row and the last 2 of each row are always going to be 2 knit stitches to keep that garter stitch pattern. And then I'm going to count from there. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I'm going to do 9 red stitches after I do the border, and then I'm going to add in a white stitch, and then a red stitch and a white stitch, and then 9 more of the red stitches, plus 2 for the border. So I will show you exactly what I'm doing. I always like to start off my pictures with the knit stitch, so I'm going to keep the knit stitch for this first row, and then for the second row I'll switch off to the purl and then do a knit and a purl. It's just a habit though, so whatever you find easiest, go for it. So I did my 2 for the border. Now I'm going to do 9 more stitches for the inside of the project. Alright, so I should have 11 total red stitches sitting here. So I'm just going to double check and make sure it's 11. So it is. You always want to start off on the right foot with these pictures, otherwise they can end up looking really odd. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my white yarn at this point because I've gotten to the point now where I need to do a white stitch. So always tie off your white or whatever your second color yarn is on the purl side, because the purl side goes on the inside of a project and you won't see the tie off. Just going to take that. And so I'm going to go into my next stitch and just do a knit stitch using the white yarn instead of the red. And if I look at my picture, after this white stitch I just did, I'm doing a red one, then another white one, then the rest are red. So the whole time I'm just kind of referring back to my cheat sheet that I made. It makes life a whole lot easier. So I have finished my snowflake, I've tied off the white yarn, and I still have 2 white stitches sitting on my needle. So before I do the top border, which is the garter stitch, I'm going to do one more row where I continue the stockinette stitch. And that's just to completely finish off that snowflake. If I were to go right into the garter stitch, these 2 pieces would end up looking like a purl when I want them to look like a knit stitch on the side, like all the other white stitches. So I'm going to go ahead and just do one more stockinette stitch row and then 2 rows of the garter stitch. Alright, so this is what it looks like once you cast off and you do those last 2 rows of the garter stitch. And I've gone ahead and sewed on 2 buttons, and the last thing I'm going to do is attach little loops. I'm using a bigger coffee cup to put this around. So let me show you what it looks like. Looks like this. And what's going to happen is these little loops that I'll attach will loop through this handle and onto the buttons to hold everything in place. So when you make the loops, cut about 3 to 4 inches of yarn. And what you're going to do is kind of go in towards the middle of the end. So not at the very tip, but you want it to be towards the middle because it's actually going to go through this handle. So take the yarn and then tie it off at the very end. And kind of hide the knot on the purl side so you don't see it. So that's one knot. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the other loop. Alright, so I'm going to hide that knot. So this is the whole thing. I have 2 loops, 2 buttons, and when I put this around the cup, I'm just going to bring these loops over the buttons to hold everything in place. So that it looks like this. And as you turn the coffee cup, you get this beautiful snowflake. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this video, be sure to check out more of my videos and subscribe to my channel. And hopefully I will see you soon.